Hi, I'm Bryce Crittenden.
Hi, I'm Caroline Land, and welcome back to EPL's Overdue Finds.
Caroline, how are you today?
I'm good, Bryce. I'm going to get the controversial topics started right off the bat
Hmm.
today. As you know, I work at the Capilano Library, the
Hmm.
branch of EPL, and since we haven't been able to do all of our usual things like programming and classes and events, we've been doing some more interactive things in the spaces, asking questions, doing activities, and Capilano this week is asking one of the most controversial questions of all. So I'm going to put it to you, Bryce. Does pineapple belong on pizza?
Oh man, this I knew this episode was going to be controversial, but I can't believe we're starting off this hot with it. But
I'm going there. I'm going there already.
no, it does not. It does not belong on pizza.
Okay,
My apologies to
that's
those. I'm getting
bold.
lots of shaking heads, so I'm clearly in the minority here. Caroline, clearly you
Yeah,
are a you like the pineapple on the pizza, which is fine.
I do. Yeah.
Everybody's allowed to have their own taste. But I need to know though, what are the fine residents of Capilano saying about pineapple being on pizza?
So far, it's about 2-1 for pineapple on pizza. Yes.
Wow.
So they are enjoying it.
Clearly, I'm in the
Yeah.
minority. I think I'm also outnumbered here today, 3-1 with the pineapple on pizza. uh, Caroline, though, before we get going today, I have to ask you
Yeah.
because we are right in the middle of it. Winter Olympics, and
Yes.
anybody who follows you on Twitter knows you're a huge figure skating fan. Have you been enjoying them so far?
I have been. I've been loving the figure skating. So proud of the Team Canada athletes who are competing, and just looking forward to another week and a bit of great competition.
Mm-hmm. So, we kind of joke around here at the beginning of the show about this being a little bit of a controversial episode. And
Yeah.
Caroline, this is kind of an episode that I kind of wish we weren't doing. Like,
Yeah.
because it's been back in the news. And today, of course, we're talking about banned books. And little fun fact. So when the podcast first started in 2018, this is the second episode of the podcast. We had a great conversation between best friend of the show, Kate Gibson, and Darren Hagen, and they were chatting all about banned books. And that was like, it's funny because this is episode 102. So it took us
Yeah.
100 episodes to kind of come back to this. And sadly, this is all back in the news already. So we thought,
Yeah.
this is a topic we clearly need to talk about again, unfortunately.
It is, and while I'm with you there on wishing it wasn't a topic that was so central to what's going on right now, we are pretty lucky in that we've got some great guests today.
Yes, absolutely. And last couple episodes, we've had first time guests on the show, and I love having different EPL staff members on. And yeah, I think everybody's really going to enjoy today's episode. First, I want to welcome to the show. She's collections librarian, Ilona Storie. Ilona, how are you today? Welcome to Overdue Finds.
Thanks. I'm doing really well. I'm happy to be here.
So on our last episode, it was on book talks. In case maybe people didn't get a chance to listen to that episode, we had Mary Bennett on, who's also a collections librarian. So just in case people missed that episode, can you tell us a little bit more about your role as a collections librarian?
Yeah, so I work in the collections management and access division. And so basically, what we do is we're responsible for getting everything into the library, including the digital stuff and the physical stuff. And so people receive, they catalog, they process. We have our materials delivery, a part of that. And there's five librarians that select the material, and I am responsible for selecting for juvenile materials, so kids, teens, all the formats for those age groups.
And there are a lot of things for everyone from babies up to teens. There's a lot of different things available for you to review.
There sure is. It's got to be the best job ever because I've spent all my time shopping for books for kids. Like, hello. So
Nice. And I also want to welcome to the show, first time guest, of course. He's the manager of our Londonderry branch. Please welcome manager Andrew Halberstadt. Andrew, what's going on today? How are you?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good. And I just have to say, I had pineapple on a pizza just this past weekend, and it was delicious.
Where did you get that pizza from?
From Red Swan.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I love their crust. It's really good.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
got
not a sponsor.
Not a
but
sponsor.
not a
good.
sponsor. Yeah, they sprinkle a little sesame seed on the crust. It's quite tasty.
Nice. So, Andrew, so obviously you're the manager of the Londonderry branch. Is it kind of handy having a branch within Londonderry Mall? Like, I got to think that's got to be kind of nice.
It is kind of handy. I rarely, unless it's really, really cold outside, I rarely bring a coat to work. Like I'll leave my coat in the car. I mean, there's not an underground parkade or anything, but the parkade is covered where I park. So that's a benefit. You don't get a bunch of snow and ice piling up on your car while you're working. And then when I want to go for a walk on my breaks, I just take a spin around the mall, and it's quite lovely. The one downside is that in the branch here at Londonderry, we don't have a ton of natural light. I think if you step a couple strides into the corridor, we do have a skylight right above us, but I do miss out on the natural light a bit. But if you do go for a spin around the mall, they've really opened things up with the windows and stuff. So it's quite nice to work in the mall at times, for sure.
That space was recently renovated as of a few years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, in 2018, we moved to a much better location, I would say, in the mall. It's much more visible, and it really pops as people are walking by. So what ended up happening here was we went from kind of a slower location in relative standards across EPL to one of the top 3 locations for daily visits. And it is a bit of a smaller space, so people really cram in here. But that's, I would say, like our biggest resource here, even more than our content. People just love coming into the Londonderry Library and spending time, even if there's no seating available. Sometimes they'll just even sit on the floor.
Nice. Well, we're so happy to have both of you joining us today because your roles play a lot into our discussion today, all about banned books and intellectual freedom and all of that stuff. So, but before we get into today's main topic, of course, let's share some of our recent Overdue Finds picks of what we've been enjoying lately. Andrew, we're going to start with you. Is there a recent title that you can recommend to listeners?
So I recently watched Dune, the new one, as it hits to go. So I saw it on the shelf, that hits to go shelf, and I was like, I got to take that. And it was good. It was a little bit long and a little slow. And I understand there's going to be 2 parts. So there's another part coming out. I actually don't know when, but I enjoyed it. I'm actually really looking forward to that second one, to the point where I went on Wikipedia just to see, because I haven't read the books, where the plot ends up going. So I spoiled for myself, but yeah, the movie was really well done. And I also watched a few years ago, and I think this is partly why it stood out to me to pick it up. I watched a documentary called Jodorowsky's Dune. Have you guys heard of that one?
Yeah. I've never watched it, but I definitely know the documentary.
So we have that in our collection as well. I think it's a Blu-ray disc as well as on Hoopla. And I saw it a few years ago at the Metro Garneau, and it was really fascinating. And the way they described it, they argued that it was the most influential film that was never made. Because they started working on it. This really kind of strange director, Alejandro Jodorowsky, in like the early to mid 70s, before Star Wars and Alien and all that. They had like a $15 million budget. It was crazy. And a script that was like the size of a phone book. And they were planning to film like 14 hours of film. And so unsurprisingly, they went way over budget, and the film didn't get made, but like the concept art, the music, the storyboards, all went on like in the Hollywood industry to influence major films like the Star Wars series, Alien, Terminator. And this guy, Jodorowsky, he's just like such a bizarre character. And I got interested in his other films, and I watched one of them called El Topo, and that's also in our collection. And man, I'm not recommending it. It's weird stuff. I think they call it like a psychedelic Western, and I can't even describe it. It was super bizarre.
Nice. Yeah, I haven't watched Dune yet. It's one of those movies where, like, when it came out, I was like, oh, this looks like, visually it looks amazing. But then I was kind of like, oh, it looks like I'm not, like, I've never read the books. I didn't see the original movie. None of that. I know it has its fans, but I've always been like, yeah, I'll get around to watching it later. But I still want to watch it. It looks stunning though.
Well, if I had to choose between Jodorowsky's Dune and Dune, I would recommend Jodorowsky's Dune.
Okay. Yeah. It's funny, actually. If I had both of those sitting in front of me, I would pick the documentary for sure. So
nice.
No, great picks.
Before we go on to Ilona, I just want to jump back. And Andrew, you mentioned that Dune was a hits to go title, which listeners of the podcast will recognize as our kind of grab and go bestsellers, new release items. And there's recently been a change to the circulation of hits to go items, which before you could only have one out for 1 week. And now you can have two for 1 week. So if you maybe want Dune, and I saw recently a past pick of yours, Bryce, The Eyes of Tammy Faye.
Oh,
you could take both of them at once now. So check that out next time you're in a library branch.
Nice little insider info there, and yeah, definitely take advantage of that. It's funny because when I do go into branches, that's like one of the first things I love looking at is the hits to go shelf, and there always seems to be at least one or two things on there that I haven't seen yet. So yeah, make sure you check those out next time you're in a branch. Ilona, how about you? What have you been enjoying lately?
Because I select the kids' material, I tend to read and watch and kind of immerse myself in all of that. So the one I wanted to talk about is actually a YRCA title for the Young Readers' Choice Awards this year. So it was written in 2019, but its sequel came out in January. So I'm looking forward to that. So anyway, it's called Dragon Pearl, Yoon Ha Lee. It's a Rick Riordan Presents title, which means it's his separate imprint, and he gets middle grade authors to incorporate different kinds of mythologies into their stories, and they're so well done. I just love them. He doesn't write them, he just promotes it and that kind of things. So I just want to talk about it's a really great little novel. It's for ages grades 5 and up, and it's a fantasy title, but it also has a lot of science fiction, and it's got Korean mythology weaved in very seamlessly. And it's a bit of a space opera. It's got some war and battles and all kinds of things going on with it. So it's really appealing, and I like the idea of exposing, younger readers to something so grand and so big with the mythology weaved in. I really liked it. So the girl, the main character, her name is Min, and she's 13 years old, and her brother has gone missing, and so she's determined she's going to go and find him. He's accused of deserting the space forces where he works, and so she's decided she's going to find him. So her hunt for him takes her across the 1,000 worlds, and she finds a disowned relative in a casino. So there's gambling, and then she impersonates a dead cadet on her brother's ship, and then she manages to hook up with a female dragon and a non-binary goblin. So there's just so many layers to this. It's really fun. And the funnest part of this is that Min is a fox person, so she can actually transform herself, and she can charm people into believing she's something else. So there's that whole trickster element to it. It's a great read, and I'm looking forward to reading the other one. And Riordan called it Star Wars combined with Korean mythology, and I definitely agree with that.
It sounds like pretty epic, just the way like you were describing it, with like fox people and gambling and all this mythology. Yeah, so that's the first one, and then there's a sequel coming out to it later, or is it early next year? Or?
It's out, actually came out in January, and the second one is called Tiger Honor, and the series, the 1,000 Worlds series. So nice. It's great.
When we did our kids pop culture episodes where we interviewed actual children as opposed to just us. Rick Riordan was definitely a hugely popular author across a number of age groups.
Yeah, he definitely covers all of the gamut. He was the first one to really introduce mythology in a really forward-thinking way with his Percy Jackson series, and it's great that he's reaching out to authors that are this is their lived experience, right? They're sharing their mythology, and it's cool. It's really fun.
Nice. Caroline, how about you? What have you been enjoying lately besides Olympic figure skating?
Besides that, I have a children's book this week.
Nice.
It's The Great Antonio by Elise Gravel. Elise Gravel is a French-Canadian author and illustrator who I adore. She has the most creative sense of humor. Her books are just really engaging. Love her stuff. And this is a picture book biography about the Great Antonio, who is a Montreal legend. These rumors circulate around this guy. He weighs as much as a horse. He's wrestled a bear. He once ate 25 roasted chickens all at once. He can pull a truck with his braids. He's this strongman wrestler guy who kind of sets up office outside of a donut store. And this is just a picture book kind of celebration / biography of him. But I also really love it because in the descriptions of it, it says like everybody in Montreal knows this guy, or everyone in this community, this part of the city would know him. And there are people like that in different cities and different areas, and so I love that local aspect to it. It's a part of the Dune series, so it's kind of a cross between a picture book and a comic book, and is really great. It's listed for ages 4 to 8, around there, but really I think everyone would enjoy The Great Antonio.
So when you said The Great Antonio, I'm like something sounds familiar here, and I just did a search. So first of all, the book sounds amazing, and I'm 100% gonna check that out. And the reason why, and this is for kind of adults listening to this show, so we talked about the kids book, but if you go on YouTube and search The Great Antonio versus Antonio Inoki from Japan, it is the wildest wrestling match turned wrong of all time. So I won't spoil it, but let me just say they get in the ring, and of course everybody knows like wrestling is not real, and most times they have their match worked out ahead of time. And I don't know what exactly happens communication wise, but it turns into like a legit fight. And there's actually a really funny clip of comedian Bill Burr doing commentary over it. So, for the kids, grab them a copy of The Great Antonio, and for the rest of us, go to YouTube and check out his fight with Antonio Inoki. Caroline, have you seen this fight?
No, but I will be as soon as we stop recording.
Yeah. No, that a great book recommendation. Like I said, you started talking about it, I'm just like, wait a second, The Great Antonio, that sounds really familiar. So yeah.
And then I got to the part where he wrestled a bear.
Yes,
so,
absolutely.
Yeah.
No, so crazy.
Yeah. So what have you been enjoying, Bryce?
Yeah. So, like most people, like probably if you watch any TV lately, you've probably seen a ton of ads for the new Batman movie. So it's just called The Batman, and it's out on March 4th. And as a Batman fan, I am so on board with this movie. A lot of people have been kind of questioning the casting of Robert Pattinson, but he plays a young Batman. But I obviously have not seen the movie yet because it is not out, but I am looking forward to it. But it made me think of another Batman. We talk a lot about Batman movies, but the Batman series that I think a lot of people should kind of go back and watch is Batman the Animated Series. So we have all 4 volumes of it on DVD in our collection here at EPL. And really, it's for all ages. But It's kind of interesting though, because the series ran from 92 to 95. And if you're kind of in my age group, you probably remember watching it a lot, like after school. And it's interesting because obviously it's cartoon and it is marketed to kids, but it definitely was kind of like a more mature Batman. The show was dark. It kind of had this dark art deco look to it, and it's set in the 90s despite it looking like it's kind of like set in the 60s maybe. But yeah, the show itself though, despite it being kind of like a darker tone, like the colors that they use on the villains, like we see absolutely everybody when it comes to villains. Of course, we get a lot of the Joker, who on this series is voiced by Mark Hamill. We get our first real look at kind of Harley Quinn, which has kind of become, a lot of people obviously know of that character from like the Suicide Squad movies, but Harley Quinn kind of really started within Batman the Animated Series. And yeah, this is just kind of this is just a really great animated series. Oh, and probably one of the best too is we have Batman himself is voiced perfectly by Kevin Conroy. So yeah, if you haven't yet, or maybe it's been maybe since over 30 years since maybe you've watched the original animated series, go give it a watch and just pick up one volume and throw on a random episode. And this is probably some of the, outside comics of course, this is some of the best Batman storytelling.
We've already had some controversy on the show. I'm not going to further it by having you rank the movie and TV Batman,
No.
But maybe on a future episode.
Yes, definitely. We'll see. I'll have to watch the new Batman first and let you know how that goes. All right. So today, of course, we are chatting all about banned books, intellectual freedom. Of course, as kind of mentioned at the top of the show, it's been in the news a lot lately. We've heard about the book Mouse being banned by some school districts, and there's been pictures of book burnings, I believe, in Texas. So let's just, I guess, get right into it. Andrew, one of the things, of course, that you do at EPL is teach the intellectual freedom course for staff, and I've had a chance to go to it, and it's great. But for those listeners who maybe aren't familiar with it, what is intellectual freedom, and why is it so important to the work that we do here at EPL?
Yeah, quite simply, intellectual freedom is the right of every individual to both seek and receive information from all points of view without restriction. So it's about ensuring access to all expression of ideas through any sides or any cause or any question or any movement that might be explored. And I'd say like the reason it's the most important for public libraries as a public institution that promotes access to information for anyone that seeks it out is if we start censoring content and we start deciding who gets access to the content in our library or our library services in general, if we start doing that, it literally amounts to a violation of someone's human rights under the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and we can be found liable for that.
So, and the course itself, like how long have you been teaching this course for staff?
It's been pretty close to a couple years now. I started teaching it with our director of branch services and collections, Sharon Day, and she's been involved with intellectual freedom much more deeply and for a longer period of time than myself in terms of overseeing the collections and challenge material in our collections. So she was the one that developed the course. And for a period of time, she was delivering it by herself. It's a foundational course at EPL, so it's run quite frequently. And so she needed a bit of support. It was a topic that I had some interest in. And so we joined forces. It was about a couple years ago now, but we were stalled a little bit with the pandemic leading courses. We've switched from doing it in person to virtual. It's been really fun. Like every course we run, it's a little bit different. There's something else. There's always something happening in the news, whether that's in Canada or the United States or internationally. We've always got great examples to pull from. And it's not just books, it's meeting rooms that the libraries let people book. That has been a major source of controversy over the years as to who gets to book those meeting rooms and for what purposes. And definitely lately, as you were saying off the top, there's been an upswing in activity recently, especially in the United States with challenges. You referenced Mouse, but there's a lot of challenges happening right now in the United States and even in Canada. But there's definitely an upswing, and it isn't a topic that's going away anytime soon.
No, there's a famous library quote around it that a great library has something in it to offend everyone. And Ilona, at EPL, there is a process where if somebody wants to challenge or ask for the removal of a book, you've been involved on that from a staff end. Could you tell us a little bit about what's involved?
It's a process that kind of usually starts generally at the customer service desk. A customer's got a concern about a title. We'll have a discussion with a staff member about it and, express their concerns. And very often, this discussion's enough to kind of quell their concerns. Like, you can discuss why something is in the collection, where it's even shelved. And as a person that deals with the juvenile collection, where something is shelved is really important. And then if the customer still is concerned, they can go ahead and fill out our request for reconsideration form. And the form just asks some really specific questions about the content of the material, why they feel it needs to be moved or removed from the collection. And it also asks the customer what they think the best thing to do with this material is. And so it just helps everyone to have a really thoughtful sort of approach to what we're going to do with the title. And after that form is filled out, we research the title, we look at other libraries that have it, and we review it. And then it's sent to the Director of Branch Services and Collections, Sharon Day, for a final decision. And then she'll respond to the customer and let them know what we're going to do with the material. It's a process that it's pretty holistic. Like, we really think about things in a broad sense, and it's pretty important to, I don't know, to recognize the concerns of the people using the library. So we do take it very seriously.
And one thing I wanted to go back to, you mentioned, Ilona, that you have one of the best jobs in EPL. I think we've talked to a lot of people from EPL who all say they have the best job, but yours, as you say, buying children's material for the city of Edmonton. But it's not, you aren't just sitting there buying what you, Ilona, and an individual wants. Right there, you have processes, and there's a collection development policy that guides how EPL, through individuals like you, decide what to purchase for the collection.
Very true. Yeah. It would be great if I could just buy what I wanted, but you can't do that. And you really want your library collection to reflect the community that's using it. So you want to make sure there's lots of diverse versions of things, and we tend to use reviews. We definitely try to reflect the community that's using the library. So you want to make sure that the content's really diverse, and we've got materials for every age level to deal with different things. So we tend to use reviews when we are ordering stuff, and we try to make sure that we're buying the best quality material for the customers to use. And reviews are kind of essential to that, because we can't obviously read everything that comes through the door. So we rely on professional reviewing sources to kind of give us a sense of who is this book for, who is this video for, and what's the best kind of material to present, and how to present it. Like, do we put it as a picture book? Is it cataloged as juvenile fiction? Those kinds of things.
Yeah, and that process of that selection is really important, because we can't, as much as Andrew, in talking about intellectual freedom and the ability to have access to material as a whole, EPL can't purchase every book that is published or have direct access to it. So that's why it's important for people like Ilona and the selection librarians to be aware of what is being published.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thinking back to my time at library school at the U of T, I took a course on rare books, which was in one of the most beautiful libraries I've ever been in. Like the course was actually inside the Thomas Fisher Rare Book Library at the University of Toronto, and that was absolutely amazing. They had all these old manuscripts in there. If you love books, that's definitely it's like going to an amusement park of books, but. One of the big takeaways that I had from that course was a conversation that we had with our professor around intellectual freedom. And I was quite vocal in challenging this idea that things were neutral or things were not biased in terms of like what's in our collection. Because I said, the argument basically that, yes, we have to make these decisions. And so if we're deciding whatever criteria we're using, it's obviously biased in some way. And he gave me a line that I repeat in the course, which is similar to what you were saying, Caroline, which is that like collections management and collection acquisition as a process is inclusionary, and censorship is exclusionary. So it's like deciding what doesn't go in or what needs to come out on the basis of moral judgments or anything that's outside the realm of what the customers want, basically what the demand is, and what Ilona was saying, like what are the reviews, like is somebody gonna read this, is there people in our community that want access to this, and that's what drives us. So that process isn't neutral, but it is inclusionary, whereas censorship is something different. These challenges that are happening as we speak in the States or here, these are people coming forward saying, and at EPL, we have these challenges regularly. I want this out of the collection for this reason. And it's very rare that we would remove something. There would have to be a good reason outside of the framework of intellectual freedom for us to remove items. And I think we have in the past, but it was more around, like Sharon shares an example in the course around a book that was removed for plagiarism, for example. So that's quite obvious. And there's another one that she shared where it was a book on soap making, and a customer with familiarity, I think it was an Edmonton police officer with familiarity with the chemicals that they were using or they were suggesting people use as a combination, realized this is dangerous. Like this could actually kill somebody if it explodes. So I think we will remove that one as well. But those are the very rare cases where that's happened. And you could actually go to our website and see all of them, all of the challenges listed there. And but in the responses, most of which I think were written by Ilona, because the children's collection, I think, is the most challenged collection of all.
So speaking of that, like, I guess Ilona, Andrew as well, like what is like the trickiest thing to navigate about like when some of these requests come in for to maybe have a book taken out of our collection?
For me, there's a couple things that are kind of tricky about it, but the big thing for me is like historical context of something. We probably don't find this as much with the kids stuff, but because our collections, they've got a long tail. We've got a lot of material. Some of it's been around for quite some time, and we'll find maybe maybe it's appropriate to have in the collection for a certain reason, yet is sort of a negative title. Even things that would be acceptable 15 years ago or would be acceptable now, or, back and forth. One title it's a fun one. It's a Robert Munch book called Good Families Don't. And it's basically about, can I say this on air? It's about a fart. And this was excluded from a lot of library collections for a long time. And we certainly wouldn't not include that in our library now. We'd put something in there just because, not because it's offensive, but because it's kind of a fun story and that kind of thing. So those sorts of issues are kind of tricky for me. Like even another title that comes up a fair bit is Little House on the Prairie. The portrayal of his Indigenous people isn't really positive, and Laura Ingalls Wilder's had her name removed from a variety of different awards and that kind of thing, and yet there is demand for this title. how do we keep that in the collection and give it a balanced, view? We don't label here. We don't do anything like that. So that's sort of the I guess achieving that balance is difficult for me sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've seen stuff online too, where it's like, stuff like, say, Tom Sawyer or whatever that was written over, probably over 100 years ago, obviously. And yeah, there's terms that are used that are absolutely not acceptable to say anymore. But yeah, it's I imagine it's very tough to kind of look at something like that and be like, because of this word, do we take it out? And then I guess, yeah, do we also look at, oh, well, this was written back in the early 1900s or whatever. And yeah, so I imagine, like you said, that part is so tricky to navigate around. And have you seen like an uptake at all of like, talking about all the stuff that's happening in the US? Have you seen an uptake of people maybe challenging certain materials?
It's kind of interesting. For EPL, I noticed a lot of and actually just even looking at the Canadian Federation of Libraries, their Freedom to Read page, like a lot of the more recent challenges from Canada are sort of more of almost a positive thing. They want things removed because it portrays Indigenous people in a bad light, or it includes racist material. Whereas what we're seeing in the United States right now, it's gotten very political, and people are using the book banning to hide particular topics or keep them out of the schools and that kind of thing. So it's a different perspective, I think. And I don't know, Andrew might have a different thought on that as well. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't get to see the challenged items with our collection until the decision has been made and come through. It sounds to me with Sharon like it's not the same as it is going on in the States, as Ilona's sharing as well. Sharon shared with me a resource the other day, which we popped into the chat. We were running one of our virtual classes the other day. It's from the National Coalition Against Censorship, and it's a youth censorship database. And what it is a mapping project for attempts to censor or ban material throughout the United States, where they put a pin where the ban has come through, and they share the book or the item and the reason for the ban, and then you can sort by the type of challenge that it is. And interestingly enough, so I clicked around with it a little bit. The most frequent challenges are for stuff with sex, anything around LGBTQ plus. Political views are really hot right now as something to challenge, and significantly lower for violence, which is, I think it goes to show, and I think probably over time, if this mapping project was going on for, years and years and years, like hundreds of years, you would see like the shift with what's going on at the times with what people are trying to challenge, the struggle that's going on between ideas, and that's where you see it play out. For me, I think the most challenging thing with all of this, if somebody comes and makes a complaint, whether I agree with them or not, I think it sometimes it creates an emotional response, whatever they're saying about an item. So if you agree with them, there's the emotional response, like empathizing and understanding that, oh yeah, like I agree, like this is inappropriate. Also on the flip side, you get a similar response when somebody's bringing something forward and you're like, I see what you're trying to do here. And then you get angry, right? So it's like trying to toe that line is the most challenging. And, the thing that we also talk about in the course as well is like who gets to decide, what's appropriate and what isn't. And we really draw the line. We have to, as I mentioned, it's our legal obligation. It's a human rights issue. We have to draw the line at like the Criminal Code of Canada and the judicial bar for hate speech, which is not the common day usage or the social media use of hate speech, our current understanding of the word. And there's a really high bar that's set for that. And And so the reason for that, people say, well, that's pretty harsh, like that's where you draw the line. Like, you're going all the way to the law. Like, you're just a public library. Like, why would you draw the line there? And the reason why we do, and this is the saying that we talk about in the course, is like, well, who gets to decide? Should public libraries be deciding what people get access to because of how we believe? I think, a lot of us share similar values, but if you were to break everything down, I would go so far as to say that I'm 100% sure that we don't all agree on what's offensive and what isn't, or what should be in the collection and what shouldn't. And so that is why we go that far in terms of like how we treat this.
It's similar to the collection development policy being the law of how EPL operates. And it's not, I won't use you, Ilona, because I think you would do a great job even without it. But, to have, if we had a collection selection librarian in there who said, I'm not going to buy graphic novels because I don't like them, that would not be okay, because that would limit the access of that to the people using the library.
The stuff that I guess is really interesting to me too, and I imagine just especially right now in the US with a lot of stuff that's being challenged. Like, if I was a kid in Texas and I'm like, hey, you can't read Harry Potter, you can't read Twilight, I think was some of the books that they were burning, or Mouse. I don't know about you. If I'm a kid, I'm trying to get my hand on a copy of those books. It's just kind of funny to me that we've gotten to this point in certain areas in North America. It's just kind of sad.
Absolutely. Yeah. Logically, it just doesn't work. Like, in reality, censorship doesn't work. No. As soon as you go after a particular piece of work and it hits the media, the sales and the usage goes way up. Even if the work is not very good, you give it that clout, that street cred, or just that you spark people's curiosity.
Absolutely.
And that point about hitting the media too, that reminds me, one of the things that over my time at EPL, sometimes people have been surprised by, is that we provide unfiltered internet access for everyone, including children. And so EPL has really taken the stance on this, that it is up to the parents or guardians of individual children to be making those decisions with or for them. The library is not going to be the one doing it.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And it goes over to the collections as well. Very often, our letter will say, thank you for taking an interest in what your child is reading. And it is ultimately your responsibility to decide what your child is exposed to. And, we do our best to try and gateway a little bit by providing collections for different age groups and book lists and that kind of thing. But it is ultimately up to a parent or a caregiver to limit if they choose to, not the library.
So we've talked about some of the books that are being challenged or censored in Canada and the US. Are there any other ones that have kind of come to the top of your mind when you think about what's happening right now?
The one that I was looking through a list last night, and the one that really stood out to me, and Ilona, you kind of like touched not necessarily on this book, but just kind of on the theme of why it's being challenged right now. The book is called Michelle Obama, Political Icon by Heather E. Schwartz. And looks like it's a book for kind of kids, probably in elementary school, maybe older kids, maybe grades 4 through 6. And it's just about former First Lady Michelle Obama. Well, unfortunately, a parent in Texas basically asked to have the book removed because they said it unfairly depicts former President Donald Trump as a bully, and basically because of Obama's reflections on race give the impression that if you sound like a white girl, you should be ashamed of yourself. So obviously we do hear a lot of, like Andrew said, a lot of challenges surrounding sex and LGBTQ topics, but that one for me was like, wow, like we're starting to go there already with politics. Like that one for me really stood out.
Yeah, anytime like politics so blatantly creeps into it like that, it really illustrates why we have such a strong intellectual freedom policy in place at public libraries. I mean, we get our funding from municipal government, and we get some provincial money as well here. And we all obviously have donors. In the States, I just heard of an example the other day. Sharon shared with me, there was a mayor, I think this was Texas as well. Is somewhere south in the States. A mayor was withholding budget from the public library until LGBTQ themed materials were removed from the collection. He doesn't even have the legal power to do that. But he was trying to say, look, you're not getting this money until you take these books out of there. I'm a Christian man, and I don't want this in my public library.
And that's it's interesting because that has been the case more and more frequently. There was even a board that revoked funding because they didn't like the newspapers that were being presented through the library, and until they removed those, they weren't going to get their funding back. And I can't remember what that one was, perhaps in Florida, but yeah, it's when it gets political, it's a hard balance to hit for sure.
There's a couple that have been recently challenged multiple times in North America that were for a bit of a different reason, and more about the author than anything. And so this is where I think cancel culture creeps in. And I understand, like, people have probably good reasons for why, they don't want to support certain individuals for the things that they do in their personal life, but it is highly common for that to happen, and we stand firm on those challenges as well. So one is Stamped Racism, Anti-Racism, and You by Ibram X. Kendi, and this one was I think it was banned in some places and challenged because of the author's public statements and because of the claim that the book contains selective storytelling incidents and does not encompass racism against all people. Another one is Sherman Alexie, the absolutely true diary of a part-time Indian. And that one was challenged on the basis of some sexual assault allegations against the author. So those are common as well, going after a piece of work because of what the artist is or represents outside of the work itself.
Yeah, it's an interesting discussion just with, a lot of stuff that, like you said, just happens. Even we see a lot of, stuff with actors being charged with certain things. And it's like, can you still watch certain things that they're in? Like, are you able to separate them? And yeah, it's just it's such an interesting topic to kind of really dive into. And yeah, like, when you talk about authors, the one that came to me was J.K. Rowling. I know obviously she's had a lot of controversial statements made regarding transgender community, and yeah, I imagine it's tough because I could see, I don't know, Ilona, have we received anything about J.K. Rowling or Harry Potter books at all since some of those controversies have come up?
Nothing that's come across my desk. People still like the Harry Potter books, and pretty much anything she puts out is still very popular in the collection. So, I guess it's can you separate the art from the artist is the question there. And for me, I just think we have to try to not maintain a balance, make sure there's other material to balance off what's there. And so if there's anti-trans reflection from an author, then make sure that there's some pro-trans material available so that people can see both sides of that story.
Bryce, before we get to today's roundtable questions, can you share with listeners what we'll be talking about on our next episode, which will be available on Friday, February 25th, which is also my half birthday?
Wow. Well, happy in advance half birthday, Caroline.
Thank you.
But also on that episode, besides celebrating Caroline's half birthday, it is our favorite time of the year here at Overdue Finds. We, of course, will be going into our 4th annual EPL Overdue Finds March Madness tournament. We're going to be doing a breakdown of our picks of who we think will win. And of course, we'll be talking about the theme, which I will not unveil now, so you'll have to watch epl.ca and our social media channels for that. But Caroline, we've been receiving over the last week here some great suggestions, and which reminds me, we need to book an appointment to have a meeting to discuss these.
We need to narrow this down.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move into our quick roundtable questions. Ilona, I'm going to start with you. Are there any banned books that mean something special to you or maybe impacted you as a reader?
I've thought about long and hard about this, and there's just so many that come through that I had a hard time narrowing it down. And what it came to for me was the fact that removing materials actually limits the conversation about the topics. And it's not so much for adults, but well, I mean, for an adult, like we were talking, how as soon as something gets banned, everyone wants to scramble to read it. Right now, Mouse has 189 holds on it at EPL,
Wow.
so there's we need to get some more copies of that. But with when you're dealing with a juvenile population, if the material is removed, we can't discuss that topic anymore. They don't not necessarily have access to it. So that's kind of what struck a chord with me, is the banning material reduces the conversation, and that's troublesome for me. And actually there's lots of authors that bring that up. Their material gets removed from a school library for poor bad language, obscene language, but really it's the topic of conversation is police brutality or something along those lines. So that's kind of where I sit with those.
Yeah. Andrew, how about you?
Yeah, I read a couple of books last year that were not banned here, but elsewhere. I was just looking at the lists to see what stood out to me. Surprisingly, I wasn't familiar with any of the items listed as banned materials in Canada on the Wikipedia page. But yeah, last year I went through a stretch where I sought out books that would help give me perspective on the situation we've been dealing with here with the pandemic. And, mostly like trying to look at what we're dealing with now really isn't that bad comparatively. So one of the books was The Diary of a Young Girl by Anne Frank. I'd been meaning to read that book for some time, and I guess it was banned for sexual and homosexual content in the States, like school libraries. It's several school libraries had it banned, and I thought it was excellent. It blew me away. The thing that surprised me was how funny she was. Like all of the stuff that she was going through, and just like how witty, how funny, how resilient she was as a young girl going through all of that. Literally in hiding, bombs are going off in the street, and it's just kind of like life as usual, and all of the musings of a young girl, they're all still there. So that was very touching for me to read that one. And I also read 1984, and that was a little scary, but again, not really coming anywhere near what we've been going through with the pandemic, although some may argue that it is. And yeah, so 1984 was banned in the Soviet Union, I believe, a while ago. So yeah, both really good books.
I'm not sure if anybody here has been to Amsterdam before, but if you get a chance, if you are in Amsterdam, next time you're in Amsterdam, make sure you go to the Anne Frank house. Like there's a museum, and you actually get to go up into the attic where the family hid and everything. And it's one of those experiences that I'll never forget. It was just very, very powerful actually being in there. Caroline, how about you?
I chose And Tango Makes Three by Justin Richardson, Peter Parnell, illustrated by Henry Cole. For those not familiar with this is the gay penguin picture book about two male penguins in a zoo who adopt an egg and take turns sitting on it. And I chose this one because it had recently come out and was in the news and was being challenged right when I was starting library school. And so this was the title that people were talking about. And so I always have a little fondness for those penguins and their egg.
I've just from my time here at EPL, I've heard about that book quite a bit. I think it gets brought up a lot when we
Yeah.
talk about challenged books here. So,
Yeah. What about you, Bryce?
mine, I've mentioned this book before, but I think just Mouse by Art Spiegelman. I think it's really amazing to hear from Ilona that there's over like 180 holds on it or something like that right now. And yeah, it's just such, very similar to the Diary of Anne Frank book. I was looking at a thing online that said last year, this was on CNN's website, but they had a story about how 31 states don't teach about the Holocaust in schools. And it's just, which is really sad. And I think that's just with a lot of hate and division that's going on in our world right now. I think those stories are more important to be telling more often than ever. So yeah, I think probably, and I just think it's one of the most powerful books I've ever read anyway. So definitely Mouse for me. All right. So last question. Freedom to Read Week is coming up from February 20th through the 26th. What other week do you think the library should celebrate? I struggled with this one. Andrew, which week?
Whew. You're going to have to come back to me on this one. I got to do some more thinking.
All right. Ilona, was there a week that stood out for you?
Well, I'm just going to go with my pattern here. It's not a week, it's a day. It's I Read Canadian Day, and it was started by Eric Walters, and we have celebrated it at the library, but it's been moved from February into November now for this year. But it's basically a day just dedicated to reading Canadian and to raise awareness of Canadian children's material. So it's, we've got a lot of really awesome artists out there and really awesome material, and I think we all need to get out there and read a Canadian book.
Yes, 100%.
I like that one. Yeah.
Caroline, how about you?
Well, I like Ilona's answer. I'm tempted to switch, but I would like to really amp up the profile of National Postcard Week. It's the first full week of May, celebrated since 1984, celebrating and utilizing postcards. Who doesn't like getting a piece of mail that is for you? That's not, a bill, I guess. Bills don't come in the mail anymore, really, but flyers do. So yes. I think this connection we share, I think EPL has a really nice tie-in. Also, I encourage everyone to go and check out the Wikipedia entry for National Postcard Week, because it reads like it was written by a postcard. So there's a lot of pro postcard details on that Wikipedia page.
Yes. Big postcard was coming through and making sure it was well represented.
Oh yeah.
There. So I had trouble finding like a week that I thought would really kind of stand out and make sense for libraries. So I'm kind of cheating with this one, but I picked a month, and it's something that we don't really do here much at EPL, but I think there's room to do it. April is National Pet Month, and I would love to see us do more stuff with like dogs and cats and just pets in general. They help improve mental health and physical activity. I think we could have some fun, very cute programs, kids reading to dogs and
dogs reading to kids.
I would sign up for that. Dogs reading to Bryce, like that would be amazing. So yeah, and as somebody who works in marketing, we always joke around that like babies and puppies, no matter what, like they're instant sellers. So yeah, let's bring on the puppies to the library, I think.
When I started at EPL, we were still offering the program Pause for a Story, PAWS.
Nice. Yeah. And the kids would just read to dogs?
I think random library staff members would bring in their animals.
Oh, okay.
Actually, there is a program where they actually bring in dogs for that sort of, or animals, pets for those sorts of situations. So yeah, it's definitely a thing to do. I think I like that idea.
Yeah. Be fun. Andrew, did you find a week yet that you think we should do something with?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with the Masters tournament week. It's a full week, the first week of April, where we can talk about golf. And the Masters doesn't really need any more exposure. It's like the biggest golf tournament in the world. It's a good time to showcase all of the golf instructional material that we have at the public library in our nonfiction section. So we do have a lot of really good titles there that can help you improve your golf game, really kind of hone in your swing and take a few strokes off that score.
Yeah, I think EPL should be the official library of the Masters tournament.
I like it. Yeah.
Let's make this
that
happen.
Would be amazing.
I'm going to talk to our marketing director, Anna Alfonso, and see what kind of budget we have to get on board as an official sponsor. Of
you might need to go on a fact-finding mission first.
Absolutely. I'll volunteer for that.
Well, we do have green in our logo.
That's true. It's just natural fit right there.
Thank you both so much for joining us today, Ilona and Andrew. Is there anything that you would like to let our listeners know about?
So on top of being the manager of the Londonderry branch, as well as one of the trainers for intellectual freedom, I'm also on the Indigenous Services team, and we have an event coming up in March, and it's led by Rise Edmonton. And they do quarterly book clubs with us on Indigenous themed books, and they're really excellent. And they usually feature the author coming out or the editors. And so we do have one coming up in March. It's Saturday, March the 12th. And the book that we'll be featuring is Stories of Métis Women, The Tales My Cookum Told Me. And that event will feature two of the editors from that book, Bailey Oster and Marilyn Lizet.
Great.
Just because I've had enough of February already, I thought maybe we could highlight a fun event in February and everyone has something to look forward to. So Family Day's coming up, and EPL's got some great programs, lots of in-house kinds of activities, some online things that are kitted that you can do. So just go to the website. There's some great lists as well tied into it. So I think we should all go out and enjoy Family Day.
Great advice. Love it.
We hope you've enjoyed today's episode. If you haven't done so, we encourage you to hit that subscribe button so that you automatically get all of our new episodes. Please also leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. We love getting reviews. And most importantly, tell a friend about the show.
Yeah, and don't forget, we're going to have a link to absolutely everything that we talked about in today's show notes. So there's lots of great books that were mentioned and some lists and events. So make sure you click that link for the show notes and you'll get all of those links. And as usual, we love to hear from our listeners. And you can reach us on Twitter at epl.ca and use the hashtag EPL Overdue Finds. And you can also email us at podcast@epl.ca. Both Caroline and myself get those emails. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.